Hey everyone, this is Jerry with San Pedro Mastery. Here's an update on the cacti I'm growing in small containers. We're going to see how they're doing, and we'll also take a look at a new batch, quite a large one, which I've just started. Four months ago, in the previous episode of this series, you may remember that the containers were placed on the floor of my terrace and were protected from the hard summer sun by a panel of heavily shading dark green fabric, with enough space between the plants and the fabric to allow for good air circulation. Since then, I have moved the containers to this table here, with a light green fabric that has a lower percentage of shading. Now, in winter, with a much weaker sun, it's better to use a lower percentage of sun-filtering material. In colder countries, you could probably get away with no shading at all. As always, you should look at the color of the plants as a guide. That will tell you whether they're receiving too much light or not enough. During the past 4 months, the plants have more than doubled in size, as you can see, although they have mostly stopped growing for the last month and a half as we've had colder temperatures. This year, I will probably leave these containers outside for the whole winter. So far, the temperatures haven't dropped too much, which is why the plants have retained their green color. Here, right on the Mediterranean Sea, it almost never freezes, but it can get close to freezing point, and when that happens, the plants will start to turn dark. So if they become red or brown during winter, it doesn't necessarily mean too much sun. It can also mean they've been exposed to cold temperatures. A change of color due to cold temperatures is nothing to worry about, as they will turn back to green with the warmer days. If you want your seedlings to stay green, you should avoid subjecting them to temperatures below about 8 degrees Celsius or 46 degrees Fahrenheit. Of course, if you live somewhere where it freezes at night, then it's probably a good idea to keep them inside your house. At this age, they might be able to tolerate freezing point, but probably not much lower than that. In fact, I would not even attempt it at freezing point. So, if you live in a warm region like I do, leaving your seedlings outside during winter is possible, making sure, of course, that it doesn't freeze at night. But that is only valid if your seedlings are about this size. If they are much smaller than this, then you should keep them inside your house, in front of a sunny window or under a grow light. At least for their first winter, until they have built some size and gained some strength. One advantage of keeping them outside during winter is that you won't get bugs. Bugs are not active in the cold, and even less when there is rain and good air circulation. If on the other hand you have the plants indoors, then the conditions could be ideal for bugs to proliferate, with warm temperatures, no rain and no wind. Although to be honest, it shouldn't be a problem of the same magnitude as if you were to grow indoors during the warm season. So let's take a look at the small containers, starting with a cross between Sardagnola A1 and Bridgesii CLB3. These are not very straight. This is something that sometimes corrects itself as they grow, but most of the time it's better to repot them. If you pay attention, you may notice that some of them are much smaller than others. This is because I sowed a few additional seeds of the same kind at a later date. Next, we have a split container with Taquimbalensis on the left and Pachanoi mira on the right. Both of them are open-pollinated. The mira plants are really tall, which could indicate that mira is a fast grower, but it could also mean that I started this container before the others. I cannot remember if that is the case. I've just started a new batch of containers, which I will show you afterwards, and this time I've marked down the dates at which they were sowed for future reference. There's also some mira in there, so I will check how fast this strain grows. Note that there are a few dead Taquimbalensis plants there. I'm not sure what happened. Interestingly enough, one of the mira is growing in spiral. It is quite common on seedlings, but they always switch back to growing straight after a while. Next, we have Terskeki crossed with Pachanoi Sardagnola A1. This is going to be an awesome variety. My Terskeki is a magnificent fat Trichocereus, while Sardagnola A1 is a fast-growing Pachanoi. Here, Terskeki is the mum, and by that, I mean the plant on which the fruit grew, so it should have dominating attributes. I've noticed that some of the seedlings are variegated, which is very neat. I've just started another batch of seeds with Terskeki as the mother, this time crossed with Pachanoi reals, and I'm very curious to see if that will also give some variegated plants. By the way, reals is the new Pachanoi in my collection. It's a plant that's been used for ceremonies in Spain for years, and this summer I was kindly allowed to pick up a few cuttings with flower buds on them. A big thank you to those involved, I really appreciate. The cuttings they gave me ended up rooting and flowering beautifully, and I've since managed to produce several kinds of seeds, some with reals as the mum, others with reals as the dad. I believe this is the first time ever that seeds from this strain are available, so if you're interested in these seeds, please drop me an email. Next we have a container of Pachanoi Sardagnola A1 crossed with Knuthianus, and they're already looking great. On all this container you can see that the plants are packed very tightly together. A bit too much for my liking in fact. Which is why the new batch I've just started, and we'll see that later in this video, has only 60 plants per container, instead of 80 previously. I think they will grow faster and better with a bit more space around them. Note that the color of the seedlings I'm growing is perfect. It's just the right shade of green, the one you get from growing them under the sun, and just the right amount of it. Here are the same exact plants, but filmed on July the 16th. As you can see, their appearance has improved tremendously in just a few months. When the plants are red, like a lot of these were, it's because they've had too much light. And what I recommend in such a case is to give them even less light than you would normally give a healthy green-colored cactus. So what I did is place them under not one, but 2 layers of heavily filtering fabric. The dark green fabric I use is sold as 90% shading, but I doubt if these figures are reliable. I don't think it really is that high a percentage. What I do know is that it filters quite heavily, and that 2 layers of it will give an excessive amount of shade for a cactus, even with all day long exposure to the scorching hot sun that we have here in July. However, these red babies needed more shade than normal so that they could recover, which is why I opted for such a heavy shading. The 2 layers completely solved my problem, and now the plants look fantastic. This is a container of Pachanoi TPM SPM, which is a beautiful monstrous San Pedro. The seeds are open pollinated, but it's possible the father is Costa, which is a Pachanoi with a bluish tone and very long spines. I can't wait to grow these plants further to see if any of them turn out to be monstrous. Next, we have another cross involving TPM SPM. This is Sardagnola A1 times TPM SPM. Here again, I'm very curious to see if some of these eventually develop monstrous attributes. Out of all these seedlings grown from my own seeds, I will keep a few of each kind that I will repot individually and keep on growing until adult age. But I only need a few of each kind. The rest of them are available. So if you're interested in buying some seedlings from me, you can email me. Now let's take a quick look at some of my containers of seeds from Peru. These are Trichocereus Pachanoi and Peruvianus that my buddy Suriel ordered from Peru, and he gave me a number of seeds of each variety. Out of those, this Pachanoi called Chana appears to have grown the fastest. Most of these containers are split in 2 sections, with a plastic divider in the soil to separate between 2 different kinds of seeds. Here on the left is a Pachanoi called Path. They seem to be falling over. They could be straightened up with some wooden toothpicks, but instead I think I will repot them as they are now old enough for repotting. I will probably do that in the spring. The other kind next to it is called Legendary Matucana Pachanoi, which is a strain I've heard of before. These seedlings have a higher rib count than Pachanois typically do. Here I've counted 7 to 9 ribs. Hopefully I will be able to grow some of these plants to an adult age and keep seeds from them. That is quite some long-term project. Here on the left we have a Peruvianus that goes by the name of Alchemist, and on the right a Pachanoi labeled Coyahuasi, which I understand was collected in Ancash, Peru. Some of these seeds from Peru, like the Coyahuasi, did not have a very good germination rate, which probably means the seeds were getting to be a little old. I presume these seeds were collected in various areas of Peru, some of them remote, and it's probably not worth the effort traveling there every year. Not to mention the fruits may not be ripe on the day you visit, or if you visit too late, the seeds might be already eaten by birds. I believe these seeds from Peru are all open pollinated, which is okay if these seeds were collected in the wild. In their natural habitat, each plant is usually surrounded by others of the same strain, without any other Trichocereus strain or species for miles around. Therefore, the seeds collected in the wild will often be genetically identical to the plant on which they grew. Open pollination is only a problem for plants that are in gardens or collections, where many cacti of various strains or species are gathered in close vicinity. I have a couple of other containers of seeds from Peru. I will show them to you another time. But there is one little gem I found that's already worth noting. And it looks like it's a monstrose. This is a Pachanoi labeled Thebios. You can count on me for giving you updates on how it evolves over time. Now moving inside my apartment, we start with a few small containers of Lophophora Williamsii. I keep my peyotes inside during winter because otherwise it would get too much rain where I live, and I don't have a greenhouse. They are on the floor of my living room, close to a window, where they get a few hours of sun a day. No grow light, no heating mat, so they are probably not growing during winter. These are Caispitosa seeds that my dad gave me from his own plants. So far, these seedlings only have one head. I presume it will be some time before they start to multiply. If you know from what age they start to grow pups, please let me know in the comment section below. Here we've got some peyote seeds I've purchased. The soil has eroded a bit around them, so I should carefully place some more soil around to fill the gaps. They were sowed on April the 8th of this year, so that's how much they have grown in nearly 8 months. When I send someone some of my peyote seeds, I make sure I remove the tiny seeds. There are always a few tiny seeds among the normal sized ones. And because they are so tiny, I've always assumed they were not viable. Well, in this container, I tossed a bunch of tiny seeds that I had put aside, and much to my surprise they've come up. Or at least some of them. I did not count how many there were. However, they seem a little bit smaller than the peyotes in the other containers, which were sowed on the same day. The rest of these containers contain all the plants, sowed last year. As you can see, they have noticeably increased in size since they appeared in previous videos. I have not raised the soil on these yet. I guess I forgot. I will do that before spring. Lastly, here's the small round container that I've started last year. I love the way they look all bunched up together. When I repot them, I might as well leave them as a group in a larger pot, instead of separating them into different pots. That looks really cool when they are in a cluster. Here, in a corner of my living room, I'm growing about 30 different varieties of seeds from this year's harvest, which has been fantastic. A sharp contrast with the previous year. In the past 18 months, I've been able to acquire new interesting plants that are of flowering age, although it has sometimes been a challenge to travel in my car due to the restrictions. But it's all been worth it, as I now have tons of new crosses available. The way I grow these plants has changed as well. Up until last year, I would just pick a couple of varieties and grow them in very large trays. But this time I decided to grow most of the crosses from my new harvest. And due to the fact there are so many of them, I chose to use small containers. So there are lots of small containers, each of them with a different strain or species. Since all of these containers have been started at the same time, and since they are all subjected to the same growing conditions, it'll be interesting to find out which varieties grow faster, and identify if there are some types that will turn monstrous or variegated. I would like to keep a few plants of each kind growing for years to come, making sure I don't forget to label them meticulously as I repot them. As for the small round pots that you can see here in the center, each contains seeds with a different habitat of Lophophora Williamsii. Those were gifted to me by Andy, a subscriber from the USA who is growing every single variety of Trichocereus seeds that I produce. Out of the 8 varieties of peyotes here, only 1 did not germinate. The rest had germination rates ranging from average to excellent. In this pot here, for instance, it looks like about every single seed germinated. I am so looking forward to see these peyotes grow, and of course I will keep you posted on how they're doing. If you're wondering what my setup is, it's a good old-fashioned fluorescent T5 tube, 4 feet long, a heating mat, also 4 feet long, and some insulation foam between the floor and the mat. I could use a timer, but instead I switch it on manually when I wake up in the morning and switch it off when I go to bed. Normally, in a room that has plenty of ambient light, like this one here, you only need 1 tube. If the room is very dark, you may need 2 tubes. For the first few months of growth, I think fluorescent T5s are unbeatable. They give you maximum germination and perfect results out of the box, unlike LEDs, which don't work quite as well for young baby cacti. Maybe with the right kind of LED light and the right settings, you could get similar results to a T5, but I have my doubts. I mean, if you already have a LED lamp, then you can use it. But I much prefer a fluorescent T5, at least for the first few months. Afterwards, the plants need more light, and a LED light may be a more economical option than running several fluorescent T5s. Now, this particular brand of fluorescent T5, rooted, I would not recommend. I don't think there's anything wrong with the light itself, but the stand system is badly designed. The lights are easy to attach to the stand, but extremely difficult to detach. It's hard not to damage the lights when you unclip them. After only a few months of use, there were already bad connections. Now, after years of use, it's hard for me to find a single working light out of about 10 of them. I even had to tie this one together with zip ties so that the whole thing does not fall apart. Now, since the plants are located in front of a window, I thought I would talk about sun exposure. I'm trying to avoid direct sun exposure in this setup, which means that in the morning, I place this panel on to protect the containers from the sun. In the early afternoon, the sun moves away and I can remove the panel for the rest of the day. Why am I avoiding direct sun on the containers? Well, you would not believe how hot a sealed container can get when you leave it in the sun, especially in a heated room. And excessive heat can bring white mold, which is the main danger facing the plants while they are enclosed. If the containers were open, then high temperatures would be no issue. But as long as they are still enclosed, you have to be careful. And by the way, it doesn't have to be a reflective panel. A large piece of cardboard or plywood would also do the job. But since I had this panel lying around, I thought I might as well use it. Whether you make a reflective panel yourself or just use a large piece of cardboard, I would suggest you only make it about half the height of this one. Mine is a bit too high. You only want to protect the containers from the sun. You don't want to make your room unnecessarily darker. Now, if like me you have the containers in front of a sunny window, but you have to go to work and you cannot move the panel depending on the position of the sun, then I would recommend to leave the panel on all day. That's what I do when I have to go away. I left the lids on as this gives the containers rigidity when I stretch the transparent film around them. I did not pierce any holes at the bottom to avoid water leaks. I will make draining holes in a few months when the containers are finally open. Now I've removed one of the lids so that you can see the freshly born babies. Like I mentioned earlier, I won't cram 80 plants in each container anymore. Here there are only 60, so that they have a bit more space. Of course, if you want to put just 20 seeds in a container this size, that's fine as well. I just want to get as many plants per container as possible in order to optimize the electricity costs. Right now, at the beginning of the winter, is actually a great time to start seeds. The common belief is you should start seeds in spring, as you have the whole of the growing season ahead of you. But starting them indoors when the cold weather starts is another really good choice. Like this, the plants will already have gone through their most critical month of growth by the time you move them outside in the spring. And by the end of the summer, you can expect them to be quite large. I start this container with a minimum amount of soil that is about 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters. I keep the soil low so that the plants have some room to grow. There are 2 inches between the soil level and the lid, so you could leave the plants enclosed for up to 6 to 8 months without them reaching the lid. By the beginning of spring, this should be about 1 inch tall, at which point I will remove the lid and place them outside in the filtered sun. So as you can see, it's good to have a deep container like this while the seedlings are enclosed. They have room to grow, and fungus gnats won't be an issue because they cannot get in. But when you remove the lid and place them outdoors, then the high walls of the containers are going to obstruct air circulation. The solution is lifting the soil level, and you have to do this extremely carefully when the soil is very dry. And I say extremely carefully because the soil will be brittle. Ideally, you want to leave the soil in one piece. Once the container is empty, that is a perfect time to make holes at the bottom for drainage. Then you fill the container with fresh new soil and you replace the old soil on top of it. There won't be any border anymore on the container, and therefore air circulation around the plant will be fantastic. Place the container somewhere where the wind passes through and you should have no issues with insects. Not to mention the fertile new soil underneath will give the plants plenty of new food to grow like crazy during the warmer months. So now you can see how this type of container is just perfect for starting seeds at the beginning of winter. First, you start them with a low soil level. They will have plenty of room to grow inside a sealed ecosystem. Then when the spring comes, you open the container and raise the soil level. I know I repeat myself, but if you're going to keep them enclosed for months, then I really recommend you sterilize the soil. I have a video on how to sterilize the soil. It can be done in a microwave oven or in a pressure cooker. It's not a compulsory step, but it really makes your life easier afterwards. Mold is a lot less likely to find its way inside the containers, and fungus gnats won't be able to get in either. Furthermore, you won't have to water, and neither will you have to check on them on a regular basis. If you would like to purchase the same seeds as I'm currently growing here, please send me an email. You will find my email address in the description of this video. I will also make it appear now on the screen. It's sanpedromastery@protonmail.com. Please mention your country, and I will email you with a list of my seeds with prices and photos. I have various kinds of San Pedro seeds, and also some crosses with Peruvian Torch and Bolivian Torch. And if you don't want to go through the process of growing from seeds, I also sell seedlings that are a year old, just like the ones you saw earlier in this video. Before I go, I would like to mention that there are more and more scammers active on YouTube. I don't think anyone has tried to impersonate me yet, but that happens to so many people on YouTube, including smaller channels and plant-related ones, that it's probably only a matter of time until a scammer tries to do that. I will never contact any of you through the comments section of my video. In fact, I will never seek contact with any of you. I wait until you email me. I don't have a Facebook account, not even Twitter or Instagram, so if anyone contacts you there, it's not me. It's a thief that wants to rob you of your money. The only safe way to contact me is through my email address. Hope you enjoyed this update. Hit like if you did, and make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss any of my future videos. All for now, my friends.